Brenden, it's great to have you on the podcast today. How you doing?
Of course, man. Very good. Yourself, Adam?
No, good, good. Yeah, I'm great, my friend. I'm very well, and it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. And I see that you have a YouTube channel. You help driven entrepreneurs, and provide lots of positive advice on your channel. Like, kind of what kind of got you into this field of things?
Yeah, for sure, man. So when I was in university, I used to do these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So other guys my age were playing rugby or footy or some other sport I didn't really understand. I applied that same competitive spirit, but to presentations. So for years, I presented hundreds of times, coached dozens of people on their communication skills. So by the time I graduated from uni, I realized that I had a gift in communication and nobody was sharing it for free on YouTube. All the advice you hear right now is, you should like be yourself and like get up on stage. And I was like, what are you supposed to do with this nonsense? So I started making videos in my mother's basement, and the rest was history.
That's awesome. And I think, like, as well, you mentioned that communication is like vital. Listening, eye contact, body language. Your vocal. How you speak vocally, and a lot of people don't kind of really know how to communicate. If that makes sense, do they? And there's all these, like you said, all these guides and all these courses, and you see all these videos of people talk about, get on stage and do this and do that. And a lot of it is, like you said, it's like people are just trying to kind of manipulate people almost, trying to persuade people, isn't it? That's kind of like, kind of links in probably with communication, that kind of persuasion. There's that persuasion they're using. And like you said, you've kind of like noticed in yourself that you have this ability, to communicate effectively, and you thought, you channel it and use it.
Absolutely, brother. I think for me, it's this idea that most of us, when we think about public speaking, we think it's a chore, like doing the dishes. But we need to start rethinking, because public speaking communication is probably the most important skill we'll need to learn in our lives, because it makes our life better, because the way that we interact with everyone around us. So the better we get at communication, the better our lives will become as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think like that communication, I was talking about it on a podcast with my friend the other day, and that could be like the difference between getting a relationship, perhaps a job, networking, business deal. Like if you are talking to someone and they're not listening to you, or they're not communicating back what kind of, what you're telling them, you're going to just think to yourself, well, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time. Like, do you think this should be like kind of put into like the school system? Because I don't think it's not really something that's really spoken about too much.
I'm with you, man. It boggles my mind that it's not taught in the school system. If somebody gave me the keys to the school system tomorrow, I'd fix it, because I have the curriculum. Happy to teach it for free, but no one's going to give me the keys. So I definitely think it's important. Communication is what's going to make your life better. And that's why I really started making videos, because no one was doing it at the education system as much as they should have. And that's what led to what we're doing today. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think like you got a massive playlist of videos, and like, really, really great videos as well, like really great content. I think you're doing amazing work. And do you have any kind of favorite topics that you like to talk about? Kind of other than communication, is there any other areas do you think that kind of are important as well?
Yeah, for sure. I would say in the context of communication, the most important one is probably the easiest tip that I have to share, which if you implement tomorrow, will literally 10x your communication skills. And it's called the puzzle method. So public speaking is like a jigsaw puzzle. Those toy puzzles you kind of put together, Adam? As a kid,
Yeah,
probably now
yeah.
because it's the holidays and you can't go outside, you might as well do puzzles. So if I asked you, let's say you're making this puzzle yourself, which pieces would you start with first and why?
Mm. As a human, as a person, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like, let's say you're just doing this puzzle. It's not a trick question.
Mm.
Those
Yeah.
puzzles. Well, which pieces would you usually start with first?
Um, I'd say kind of like the bottom ones, if that makes sense. I mean, the actual puzzle pieces.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, the bottom ones, yeah.
yeah. Bottom one's good. I love that. So in general, people say is they say the corners, because if you get the corner pieces, then you can work your way into the middle. Because the corner pieces are much easier to find because they always have an
Mm,
edge, right? So you just find all the corner pieces and you figure it out, and then you work your way into the middle.
mm,
But the question is, why don't we do that in public speaking?
mm,
You have a presentation at work, you have a presentation at school. So what do? What we do is we start with the middle first. We shove a bunch of content in the presentation. We get it to it. We ramble through the entire thing. We get to the last slide. It sounds something like this. Yeah, so thanks. That's probably 95% of all the presentations that I hear. But there's an
mm,
easy way to fix this. Start with the edges first, like
mm,
jigsaw puzzles. Practice your introduction 50 times. Not 3 times, not 5 times. Do it 50 times. It's actually not that hard. It'll take you an hour, right?
mm,
Each intro is like a minute, right? It's not that hard. You can do 25, 50 times. Same thing with the conclusion. What's a great movie with the terrible ending? Last time I checked, terrible movie. Same thing with the conclusion. 25 to 50 times and rail it in. And then after that, you'll look at your presentation after a couple of hours and you'll go, wow, I'm really good at this communication thing.
mm.
Then tackle the middle. Because now you have that confidence you need. But much like a puzzle, I don't know about you, man, but if you're working on a 3,000 piece puzzle, why would you want to do that alone? That
Mm.
sounds disastrous. Get a group of friends, get a community group together, get a couple of people, and practice the public speaking puzzle together.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's really great advice, and I think they're really key points. And the fact that a lot of the times you see people who just jump into it. I mean, sometimes that might work, but like people are going to be able to notice the people who are prepared for it and people who haven't. And I remember when I was doing some army courses in the past, and so this soldier said to me, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And it's like you said, start with the bottom. If you're just jumping into the middle, you're not going to be as prepared as the next guy who's worked on his foundations and practiced, and he knows kind of his own strategy. And it's like you said, like if you do an intro or something like that, 9 times out of 10, it's going to take you more than one attempt. Because I remember when I did my intro video for my podcast YouTube thing that I did, and that took me like 60 times. I kept on doing it, and I just would say the wrong word, or I would miss something out, or there was all these little tiny things that were missing. And when I did it, I look back at all the attempts, and I was like, I took literally like 50 or 60 times to just get it right. And I think people need to keep on. Sometimes do you think sometimes people are perfectionists, or do you think they just think, oh, it's good? They kind of don't want to tell themselves that they're wrong. If that makes sense, or that they do you think that's kind of part of it? Why people just don't prepare and they just go and do something sometimes?
Absolutely. I'm with you in the sense that most people aren't afraid or are too afraid to take the action. They go, oh, I'm not real great of a speaker. Probably shouldn't say anything. But the feedback I always give people is if you want to be successful, you need to be willing to care more about the message than your actual fear. And if you care more about the message of your presentation and why you want to share it with people, and you care so much to the point that you've talked to the audience, you've had discussions with them, then you can dive. Then you can go for it. And then nothing will stop you or get in your way.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like with like giving presentations, like a lot of people, like a lot of people are extroverted and introverted. Do you think if somebody's introverted and they're not as um, kind of socially energized, do you think that how should they start out? Kind of if they have to kind of give a presentation or something, do you think they should kind of start small?
Yeah, I think for me the key is going back to puzzle. My recommendation is always The secret that the best speakers don't tell you, Adam, is that they do the same presentation over and over again. Think of Tony Robbins. He's been doing the same seminar for 40 years. 40 years. Longer than me and you have probably been alive combined, almost.
Mm,
It's
mm,
very close. But that's the point I want to drive, is if you want to be a world-class speaker, you need to start learning from world-class people,
mm,
which means pick a topic that you love, that you want to present 100 times, that you can teach, that people want to hear about. And it doesn't need to be 1,000,000 people. Just 3 is fine too. And
mm.
present it over and over again until that topic is perfect. Same thing with your podcast. You started the podcast, you weren't, it's difficult to drive conversation. When you're at
Yeah,
episode 200 of the podcast, it's a lot easier for you
yeah.
to introduce your guests better, to facilitate those conversations. And it's the same thing with everyone else. It's okay if you're shy or if you're extroverted. Just pick a topic that's repeatable and then master
Mm,
it. So in your case, my recommendation would be make a presentation on your own podcast. What are you trying to
mm,
achieve with Parrsitivity? Who are you trying to inspire? What's the target?
mm.
And what's awesome about this podcast, the presentation, is you can do it over and over and over again, because you can
Mm,
present to your local universities, communities, and after 50 times of presenting the same thing, you'll start to get a lot better at presenting it.
mm. Yeah, no, I really appreciate, you giving me feedback on it. It really means a lot. And I think sometimes it's like you said, that finding that kind of area that you enjoy or love and then kind of going into it and then going over it. Because it's almost like a muscle in some ways, and I suppose. It's like you just become you're doing it automatically, kind of without thinking probably so much about it. And that kind of makes me think, like self-reflecting with the podcast this year. I remember when I first started, I'd be thinking about what am I going to say next and trying to make it sound perfect. And now I just kind of do it. Whereas it's, I think people kind of need to just take that action, don't they? Just kind of learn about that whole process of things. That's something that I've learned, that process of patience and things taking time, and there is a process to it. And like, you doing your videos, there's a process to it.
Absolutely. And just to build on that, I started my YouTube videos in my mother's basement with no phone, no budget. I mean, you got pretty good gear. I had worse than this when I started. I
Mm,
literally had a phone, and I didn't even have a mic to it. And I was just like, hey guys, welcome to Master Talk. I literally sounded like a drunk in a basement. And I didn't even edit a single one of my videos for the first year. I
mm,
literally just recorded and posted, and I did that every week until I got really good, and then I went professional. But that's what my
yeah.
advice for people is. The issue is if you never start, you'll never get better.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's really key. And like you said, I've seen people, and I find it really motivating, by the way, and inspiring, the work that you've done and, what you're doing, and that you started in your basement and just using your phone. And, like I think people tend to overthink the equipment side of it and how they should put it put it out there, if that makes sense. People think too much about what other people are going to think about it, and they buy all this like shit, so to speak, and before they've even kind of like gone into it. And like you said, you use your phone. I use my phone, and I just before I had wired earphones, I just used the mic on the phone, and I did it audio for like 60 episodes because I was still kind of gaining my confidence, doing audio. Then I got these, and then recently I've got this mic. But it's kind of, I think you've got to just do what you feel is right, don't you think? And then because a lot of people probably compare themselves to what other people are doing.
Absolutely, man. Like, first of all, congrats on making it this far in the show. Like, that's the thing, man. Is this
No,
idea
cheers, man.
that, yeah, of course, is this idea that most people just they don't want to do anything. They don't want to take the action. And the reason is because they don't know why they want to do the thing. Like, I think if most people got really clear on the person they were serving, they would understand that it's a disservice when they don't actually do the thing. So it's the same thing with me. I mean, for me, that's probably like at the extreme, because I'm the only speech coach in my 20s who posts videos on YouTube, I believe, on public speaking coaching, which means if I don't do it, nobody else in the world is going to do it. That's crazy when you think about it. There's millions of people out there who can't afford a communication coach. So who's their coach? It's either me or it's nobody. So I need to take
Mm,
that motivation and do it, because there's millions of people around the world who are counting on me to do it.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point as well. And like you said, it gives you that that kind of place of like responsibility in some way, doesn't it? It's like you're responsible in some way, for all these other people who are they're taking kind of from your content, if that makes sense, and they're applying it to their life. And you're like your own boss almost, because like you said, there's no one else doing it. And I've never really seen anything on YouTube or the internet which you're doing, if that makes sense. I've seen lots of different how to do videos, but none really on kind of the work that you're doing. And if there are people doing similar things, it's like you're very genuine, and you're providing value. A lot of these people, you can tell if someone's being genuine or not. Does that make sense? Like people on other channels are trying to sell you a course or the quick fix guide to getting ABC.
Absolutely, man. Completely agreed with you. And I think that's what makes the difference.
Mm. Do you have any like role models or anyone you kind of like look up to or take like kind of guidance from?
Absolutely. There's hundreds that I model my life after, but if I had to pick one in particular, probably be Scott Harrison, who's the CEO of Charity Water. I think the guy with the work that he's doing is really incredible. He helps people gain access to clean drinking water around the world. But what fascinates me is the hustle. The guy is presents 200 times a year. He's raised hundreds of millions for the charity. He's very smart about the way that he thinks about messaging, storytelling, public speaking, communication. So I just think he's the guy worth following. And the best quote that I got from him that I'll never forget for the rest of my life is the following: the goal is not to live forever, but rather create something that will. So hopefully I'm trying to do that as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I really love that, and I think it's important to to have role models, isn't it? To take guidance from, and positivity and motivation, and try and like I said, model yourself around certain kinds of people, because I think like the kind of people you surround yourself with, you kind of you can become those people.
Absolutely, man.
And do you have any like favorite books at all, or audio books, or podcasts, or anything?
Yeah, of course. And I would go back to Scott's book. So Scott has a
Mm,
book called Thirst. That's the number one book I've read in my life. I highly recommend it for anyone who wants to make a difference in the world. I think the way that he thought about the charity, how he built it, how he thinks about philanthropy is not just like fluffy. Like he solved 2% of the entire water crisis, which is insane if you think about it, as one organization. So I definitely think the book is a must read for anyone who's
mm.
listening.
Yeah. No, no, definitely. And I think like that's amazing though how he's, how he's doing that work, and how he's, wanting to help other people, because like in a lot of places there are like, water crises. Even in is it Flint, that town in America? Did you hear about that? They had a water crisis in a
Oh,
town
yes,
called in
Michigan. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that was insane. So it's not just, these other kind of other countries that we see on the news. And I think it's that's kind of like what we should do in life, isn't it? Provide value, or make a difference in some way, isn't it? Something that, like you said before, is kind of going to be here when we're not, kind of thing.
Absolutely, man.
Like, would you say there are any takeaways that you kind of taken away from this year? If that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest one is always be willing to pivot, right? And the way that makes sense in my case is, a lot of my speaking engagements got canceled. A lot of events I was supposed to do didn't end up happening. So the big thing that I want people to think about is, what are you going to do at the time? Yeah, sure. I was crying for a couple of days. Absolutely, it wasn't a fun experience at the beginning when COVID hit. But at the same time, it's, hey, wait a second. If we want to make a difference in the world, we still want to get shit done. We need to understand that we don't get the year back. You can't go back. You got to go to a bank and ask a loan back for the year. You just can't do that. The only thing that you can do is to say, hey, how can I use this time to make my life better anyways? So that's what I did. I started writing my content 3 years in advance. The second thing I did is started guesting on podcasts, even if I usually don't guest. because I'm always flying out all the time. And the third thing that I did is I pivoted from a speaking business to a coaching business, and I make more money now than I used to. So that's what I really want people to think about is what are you doing with the time? Sure, you don't need to start a business, but you can read more books. You can listen to more podcasts. You can watch more YouTube videos. There's always a way for you to advance your mission and to do whatever it is you want to do. So I hope you take the time and I hope you use the time this year to do that.
Mm. No, definitely. And I think they're really, important, points you mentioned, and that time that we use, and to not abuse our time and to waste it. I think that's something that I've been very mindful of, in my life, this year especially, especially through podcasting, is that, your time is precious and you can't get it back, can you? Like you said, and you can't go to the bank and ask for a loan, that kind of loan back. And I think it's definitely been a lot of different, shifts in perspective, because people are spending more time by themselves, so they're more aware of, where the time's going. I like to think.
I couldn't agree more, man.
And well, what would you say, like, kind of like success or happiness is to you? Like, as a person.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, the best way of describing what success and happiness looks to me is that it's unique to me. Right? So I'll give
Mm,
you an example. One exercise I always recommend people do is when you think about happiness, write a list of all of the things that bring you joy. And what you realize if you take this exercise seriously enough is that your list should not look like anyone else's. And I'm happy to share mine as an example. I love clubbing. I love dancing alone in my basement. I yell at my friends at dinner and restaurants, even if it bothers other people at the restaurant. I ask them very uncomfortable questions about their life that they don't want to answer. And I take mini dance breaks in between my meetings and I karaoke in 8 different languages. That's what brings me joy, right? Whereas most people who are listening to this right now, Adam, are going, well, I don't want to do any of those things. That sounds crazy. But that's the point I'm driving. Where's your list? You spent your whole life without taking 10 minutes out of it to just say, what actually brings me joy? Is it reading a book? Is it sleeping an extra hour a day? Is it walking 30 minutes a day? Is it hitting my little sister on the head? It doesn't really matter. Make the list and do more of that thing. That's how you get more happy. That's how you solve a lot of the issues in your life. Same thing with success. What does
mm,
success mean to you? Do the same thing. Like for
mm,
me, I have big ambitions for my life. I work 16 hours a day. I'm always trying to get the next thing. I'm always trying to hustle. That's not for everybody. That just
mm,
brings me joy. But the question is define that for yourself. People come up to me and they go, "Oh, Brenden, I want to spend more time with, I'm only, I want to do big things in life, but I want to spend more time with my family." Right? So my question for them is, okay, you want to spend 2 days with your family. Why are you only spending one? Right? So everyone's got their own version of it. I think the key
mm,
is to create your own version and to take the time to figure out what that version is.
mm. Yeah, no, I think that's so key, and I totally agree with you. And I think it's finding your fingers in that thing, and creating it, whatever that is. And it blows my mind as well. Like, as you mentioned, that people go along on this course in their lives and they don't think about those things that you mentioned. And half the time, some people don't even know kind of what makes them happy, because they're so caught up in their lives and everything that's happened, and they've not taken that time to take a back seat and just think about these things you mentioned. And I think it's so important that we do those things, and think about, what is it I'm doing, what do I want from life, what's making me happy, and these key things, and putting in that work to do that. I mean, for me, things happen in life, and it's kind of how you react to it, isn't it? But like for me, I had to kind of fall through a skylight to kind of wake up, because I was chasing my ego. And then from that event happening, I went through, I've said before many times on podcasts, like, PTSD, anxiety and depression, and things happening at school as well and home. But that kind of event had to be a catalyst for me to kind of make myself think about, what is it that I'm doing and what do I want? Do you know what I mean? But I'm not saying that shouldn't be the key thing where something bad has to happen to you for you to wake up and think of it a certain way. But ultimately, people should kind of think about it and decide, because it's important, isn't it? I mean, there's more to life than just doing a job, retiring, and having kids, and then having a house, and that's it. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think, like you said, there's more.
Absolutely, man. And just building on that, who created those dumb rules, anyways?
Mm,
Has anyone ever thought of that? Like, oh, Adam, you should have 2.5 kids, not 2 kids, 2.5.
Yeah.
And you need a white picket fence. And you
Yeah.
need 2 cars, not 1. Because if you have 1 car and it leaves the driveway, people will think when they look at your house that you don't have any cars. So you better have 2 at all times.
Mm.
Who made up these rules? And then you realize, when you ask yourself deep questions about life, that all the rules are made up. So the only thing left to do is to create your own.
Mm. Yeah, no, definitely. It's quite powerful, isn't it? When you think about it, it's very, very powerful when you go to that place. And I was talking to a friend of mine on another podcast, and he said that he went to play golf with his friends, and he asked them, instead of saying, "Oh, how's your week?" or "How's your work," he asked them, "Have you had a happy week?" or something like that, or "What makes you happy? What's made you happy this week?" And he said they all looked at him and kind of was a bit, yeah. Yeah, they were like taken back, and they didn't really know how to answer the question. And I think like only like one of the guys kind of gave him a decent answer and said, "You know what, my family makes me happy," or something like that. But like the other people, I think it's something that people don't always think about, because it's like people always say usually, "Oh, how's work?" and or people say, "Oh, how's your week?" and they go, "Oh, it's okay." And you think like there's got to be more. There's got to be more to life than that, when people say, "Oh, yeah, it's okay, it's all right."
I'm with you, man. Absolutely. That's why I do things like Mind Valley, because I'd rather just talk to interesting people at this point. Going back
Mm,
to life, you don't get
mm,
to meet a lot of people in your life. Not many people realize this. Let's
mm,
say you talk to somebody new every couple of days. You're only going to meet 100 people every year. And over the course of your life, let's say you live another 50 years. I hope you live longer. Let's use this as an example. That's 5,000 people.
mm,
Out of 7 billion people, you get to meet 5,000 of them. People go into clubs or events and they go, hey, wait a second. How do I get everyone to like me? That's wrong. The question you
mm,
need to ask yourself is, who do you want those 5,000 people to be?
mm.
And when you ask yourself that question, well, then what you're going to do is different. You're going to sit in that bar that you normally didn't like and say, why am I even here? I should be going to a Mind Valley conference or a button collecting conference or a stamp collecting event to meet
Mm.
the people I actually want to talk to.
Yeah, no, it's powerful, isn't it, when you put it like that? It's definitely perspective, isn't it? It definitely is that perspective. And I think back to like places that I've worked. And, I know a lot of people from working in restaurants and hotels. It's one of those jobs where you meet lots of people. My brother said to me, "How do you know all these people?" I'm like, "Well, I've worked in these places." And I think, to get choosy, about what the kind of people that you want to talk to, the kind of people you want to surround yourself with, and it's that energy, isn't it, as well? If you're on the same vibe as somebody, you're going to feel more connected, probably, happier, and that, and that kind of tribe, isn't it? Getting to know your tribe of people, because you might meet one person who's like you, or who's on the same vibe as you, doing something similar, and then they might know 20 other people or 10 other people, and it just builds that kind of network, doesn't it? And that's something that I've taken away this year for podcasting, and I'm great. I'm really grateful for the people I've met and connected with in the space of time, and yourself as well. And it's so important, because I think, when I was at school, I don't know about you, but like I kind of didn't really feel like I fitted in. I didn't really know who my tribe of people were. I didn't. I used to think that I was the one with the problem. Whereas now it kind of makes sense, if that makes sense.
Of course, man. That makes perfect sense. And everyone has that same struggle, right? I think that's really what I want to push for people.
Mm.
Is this idea of it's normal if you haven't found your tribe early because you haven't figured out who you are yet. Like, you think I was this guy 5 years ago? Oh yeah, I love dancing alone in my basement. I love Justin Bieber. No, I would some of those things I would keep as a secret, like Justin, but everyone
Yeah.
else, like I mean everything else, like karaoke, I wouldn't tell that to the general public.
Mm.
But then over time, I kind of just said, like, screw it. Like, I was
Yeah.
like, well, I mean, this is what I like. And you know what happened? This is what's fascinating, Adam, is that the people we admire in our culture
Mm.
are all crazy. I don't know if you've ever seen Taylor Swift's documentary or what Dwayne Johnson does. You know, is this idea that the Rock and people across are all crazy. Like the Rock wakes up at every morning at 4 a.m. and he works out weights. He literally takes like an 18-hour flight to Japan, and the first thing he does when he lands, he doesn't even pack. He doesn't even put his luggage. He just goes straight to the weight room. Like it's just like it's crazy. But we admire people like him. Yet
Mm.
when we look at each other, we tend to say, "Hey, you shouldn't be crazy." But it's that very
Mm.
insanity that attracts people towards you. There's so many people on podcasts when I go, I karaoke in 8 languages. Oh no, sorry. Or when I say I go clubbing or I love dancing, they go, I love that too. It's like there you go. You give permission for other
Mm.
people to be who they actually are, which is crazy. We're all nuts. We
Mm.
just don't
Mm.
want to share that insanity with the world.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's so key, and I agree, and I think, like you said, it's not for everybody, but I think, like, if you love something and you do it and you want to be yourself, you should express that, and that's then going to inspire other people to do the same, isn't it? And I like clubbing, and going out and things like that. I'm probably not too confident in dancing sober, but if I have a few drinks, I'll dance like sure. But
That's your New
yeah,
Year's resolution. See, I
yeah,
actually haven't had a sip of alcohol once dancing. So I dance like 6, 7 hours straight and like no alcohol. That's your
yeah,
challenge for next year.
yeah. Write it down.
It shocks me that most people can't even do that. So I think you,
Mm,
of all people, can pull
yeah,
this one off.
yeah. I'll put it number one on my list.
There you go.
But that's it. But it's like that work ethic and that desire to kind of not kind of like follow the norms of society, isn't it? And that's okay to do that. And to push through the barriers of judgment and that kind of thing. I think that's something probably what keeps people back from doing things. Would you say like culture can kind of play a part in that?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, for example, let's say in my culture, it's either you're a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant, or a loser. You get to pick, right?
Mm,
Or in other cultures, right? In Americanized culture, it's you better leave the house at 20 or I'll kick you out. Right?
yeah.
It's these rules that we make in our culture, but that don't make sense because most of us are unhappy. So we need to
Mm,
start questioning all of those values because I've always believed that the truth is always in the middle, Adam. So it's
mm,
not the fact that you're right or I'm wrong or I'm right and you're wrong, but rather we're both right and we're both wrong. So we need to figure out what version makes the sense for us. So for me, I can't just look at an audience and say, you should all live in your mother's basement like I do until 30. That won't work because some people
mm,
don't have mothers. Other
mm,
people, might not even have a good relationship with them. Whereas me, I love my mom, right? So
mm,
I don't
mm,
want to I don't want to leave. I just like spending time with her because I'm always so busy already. Makes no sense for me to go back and forth to visit her. But for other people, that might not make sense. But that's the key. What everyone needs to do is the same exercise, which is to question all of the beliefs, to ask yourself one hard question about life every day. And then eventually, you'll find a truth that's unique to you. So, in the
mm.
same way that I love Justin Bieber, I like spending money on a $400 Bose headset, but at the same time, I haven't bought a new blanket in like 15 years. So, like, all
Mm.
these like don't make any sense, but like it makes sense to me, and that's the point I
Yeah.
want to drive.
Mm. Yeah, no, exactly. That's it. And I think that's where, each person is different and each person has their own ways and you have to, respect that, don't you? And I think if you're in a relationship with somebody, you respect that enough because you've got your own thing that you do, and that they've got their own thing, and that's it. And I think it's definitely something that we should accept, isn't it? And it's okay to to be yourself, and why it's probably important as well, to get to know yourself as a person and understand, what the things that you need to work on and your weaknesses and your strengths, isn't it? And to draw from that.
Absolutely, man. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, no, definitely. Just thinking, is there anything else that you kind of came to mind that you want to like talk about, or anything, any other topics?
Yeah, for sure, man. I guess I can close with my favorite life advice, and my favorite life advice is be insane or be the same. If you want to be like everyone else, that's totally fine. But if you made it this far into the podcast and you're still listening to us, you probably want to make a difference in the world. You probably want to do something important with your life. So the only advice that matters is the following: the people who do great things are often crazy. Don't you find it odd that a 22-year-old kid who lives in his mother's basement and who's literally talking to Adam on a mattress started a YouTube channel, not on pranks or vlogs? That's a normal thing to do. No, he started on public speaking and executive communication tips, and then went on to coach those executives a year later, but still lives with his mom, dances alone in his basement an hour a day, karaoke's in 8 different languages, and loves Justin Bieber. How does any of this make any sense at all? And that, my friends, is the point. When every decision in your life makes sense to the only person that matters, which is you, you'll probably be very successful. So be insane or be the same.
No, I love that, and I think it's so key what you mentioned. Like as well, like be the same or be insane, and like it's you've got to follow whatever it is that you enjoy, isn't it? Whatever that is, and that might not be might not be considered as sane, by other people, but that's just where there's that kind of separation, isn't it, between certain kinds of people. And me personally, I'd rather be in that other category than be the same. I couldn't be the same person or do that same kind of job, all the time. I think, but there's that difference, isn't there? But I think people need to tap into whatever works for them, don't they?
Absolutely, man. Couldn't agree more.
And like on social media, like, where can people find you, and your website, YouTube, that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely, man. The easiest way to get in touch is definitely the YouTube channel. All you got to do is type Master Talk in one word, and you'll find me right there.
No, that's awesome, man. And I'll definitely promote your content, and I'll put all your links in the description for you as well. But
Thanks, brother.
no, you're welcome. But yeah, I wish you all the best for New Year's Eve, New Year, and I wish you, a successful New Year as well, and all the best in everything that you're doing. I think you're doing a great job.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
No, you're most welcome. You're most welcome.